We now shift our attention to the remote Diego Garcia Island in the Indian Ocean. The US seems to be transforming this remote island into a fortified hub for global military operations. According to a report by Defense News and Analysis website The War Zone, a squadron of B-2 Spirit stealth bombers are headed to this island, leading to speculation of imminent military action against Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. And this move comes just a week after US President Donald Trump put a post on his Truth Social account stating that any attack by the Houthis would be treated as an act of war by Iran, promising severe repercussions against the Houthis. Well, according to the War Zone report, satellite images show an unprecedented military build-up on Diego Garcia over the past few days. The island has seen the arrival of at least 3 C-17 cargo planes and 10 aerial tankers. The report further states that the deployment of all of this on the Diego Garcia Island indicate preparations for a major operation by the US. And the timing of the build-up is more important. The US has intensified campaign against the Houthis, bombing Yemen for an 11th consecutive day. Furthermore, the US has renewed threats directed at Tehran over its nuclear ambitions. Now, deploying such a large number of B-2 bombers to one location is rare and appears almost certainly strategic. The massing of these advanced aircraft at Diego Garcia perhaps underscores a serious warning to Iran and its proxies. And that's not all. On Tuesday, air traffic control audio captured communications from 2 B-2 bombers flying over Australia. The pilots confirmed the deployment of a third bomber, pointing to a coordinated operation. And the deployment is not just limited to bombers. F-35A Joint Strike Fighters have also been reportedly dispatched to the region. Well, the sheer scale of these movements strongly suggests that this is no routine exercise. Instead, it points to a broader military strategy. Now, Diego Garcia has long been a critical asset in the Pentagon's global strategy. This island played a major role in the 2001 strikes in Afghanistan and the 2003 US invasion of Iraq. Let's tell you more about the island's location. It offers a major advantage. It is considered beyond the range of Iranian and Houthi missiles. But that may not be certain. According to a report by Iranian state-owned news media organization Press TV, Diego Garcia could be amongst a list of US bases in Tehran's radar. And that is for retaliatory strikes if the US or Israel launch attacks on Iran. The report claims that Iran's Khorramshahr missile and Shahid drones, both of them, they have a range of 4,000 kilometers, possess the capability to strike Diego Garcia. So, Diego Garcia could very well be in Tehran's range and may not be as formidable. Now, this latest build-up by the US at Diego Garcia also coincides with other military movements in the region. The Pentagon has extended the deployment of the USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group in West Asia and also directed the USS Carl Vinson Battle Group to join it as well. On all this, as tensions escalate, Diego Garcia appears poised to be a part of a larger strategy. The question being whether this build-up leads to immediate action or serve as a deterrent. That remains to be seen. All right, moving on. A recently declassified report from US intelligence has shed light on the financial dealings of Chinese President Xi Jinping's family, revealing that Xi Jinping's family control assets exceeding $1 billion. This report, mandated by the 2023 US National Defense Authorization Act, highlights what it describes, and I'm quoting here, endemic corruption within the Chinese Communist Party. The investigation traces back to 2012. That's the year Xi Jinping initiated an anti-corruption campaign. The report, titled Wealth and Corrupt Activities of the Leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, states that over the past 13 years in China, nearly 5 million Chinese government officials have been investigated and convicted of corruption. However, the report concludes that corruption continues to remain widespread and deeply rooted in China, with officials across various levels of government and regions implicated. A different study cited in the report found that anywhere from 8% to 65% of officials supplement their earnings through bribery or graft, depending on their rank and which position they hold in China. Further adding that high-ranking officials benefit the most from corruption, with some doubling their official salaries. And all this despite Xi Jinping's efforts to fight against corruption. The report argues that these efforts are more about enforcing political loyalty and maintaining the CCP's grip on power than genuinely addressing systemic issues. The report also examines Xi's own family. It alleges that Xi's siblings, nieces and nephews have amassed over $1 billion in wealth through real estate and business investments, further misusing their access to privileged information and political connections. While there's evidence suggesting Xi may have pushed his family to divest these holdings when he rose to power, the report finds that as of 2024, major portions of these assets remain under family control. Corruption within China's armed forces is yet another area of concern. The report highlights Xi's efforts to root out dissent and graft in the military, especially within the PLA. Xi, who also chairs the Central Military Commission, reportedly fears that corruption could weaken the PLA's readiness for a potential conflict over Taiwan by 2027. In recent years, high-profile corruption cases have included China's defense minister, his predecessor, and several senior officials in the PLA rocket force. This report, the first of its kind to address corruption among China's leadership, also points to broader implications for US-China ties. The revelations come at a time of strained ties with tensions over trade, Taiwan, and territorial disputes in the South China Sea. While US President Donald Trump has suggested plans for a direct meeting with Xi, no date has been finalized yet. The 2016 Panama Papers leak exposed how CCP officials used offshore accounts to hide major wealth. Together, these findings in China paint a picture of a regime grappling with internal contradictions as it seeks to maintain its hold on global power. Our next story is from India. Indian stand-up comic Kunal Kamra is caught in the eye of a massive political storm for doing what he does best, cracking jokes. Kamra's jokes ruffled the feathers of the ruling political party of Maharashtra, with the Deputy Chief Minister Eknath Shinde calling it a hit job. Speaking to BBC Marathi, Eknath Shinde said Kamra's remark was not a case of free speech, but a case of undertaking a supari or a contract to speak against someone. Responding to the vandalism at Kamra's show venue, the Deputy Chief Minister even hinted at Newton's law. Shinde said that he does not support vandalism, but every action has an equal reaction. And while he has a high level of tolerance, party workers may not have the same. It is not only the Deputy Chief Minister Eknath Shinde, but earlier Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Nirupam also alleged that Kamra's show is funded by none other than Shinde's political rival, the former Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Uddhav Thackeray. Meanwhile, trouble seems to be mounting for the stand-up comedian. The Mumbai police are probing if Kunal Kamra's jokes targeting Shiv Sena chief were part of a conspiracy and whether the comic received money or any other form of help to mock the Maharashtra Deputy CM. Earlier, the Maharashtra government had sought an apology from Kamra, calling it a political contract act. The government also said that Kamra's bank statements would also be scrutinized to find out if anyone motivated him to crack such a joke on Shinde. However, Kamra held his ground. In a social media post, Kamra maintained that he does not fear mob and that he will not apologize for his comments. However, he agreed to cooperate with the police and courts for any lawful action taken against him. The comedian faces multiple charges, including defamation and statements conducing to public mischief. Now, during a performance at Mumbai's Habitat studio, Kunal Kamra took aim at Eknath Shinde with a parody of a hit song from the 1997 movie, what we told you about yesterday as well, Dil To Pagal Hai. He mocked the Shiv Sena leader who led a rebellion against Uddhav Thackeray in 2022, accusing him of being a traitor and contributing to the fall of Thackeray's government and the party's split. In response to Kamra's comments, Shiv Sena workers vandalized the studio, a popular spot for stand-up comedy events that has now been forced to shut down operations indefinitely. In the past 2 days, the debate around Kunal Kamra's stand-up act has primarily been focused on freedom of speech, but in the background is a more important story. The venue announced its closure in a social media post. But what went unsaid beyond the damage worth millions of the venue, it is the jobs lost of lower middle class employees who had no role to play in Kamra's recorded act. Neither did the venue's owner. But in the end, it is not the comedian or the lawmakers who have suffered immensely. It is the common people and regular employees at a venue who have borne the brunt of a joke not taken well. Moving on and shifting our focus to Canada, Canadians once topped the list of global travelers to the US. But they are now increasingly keeping away from traveling to the neighbor. The reason? US President Donald Trump's renewed threats on annexing Canada and imposing trade tariffs. Data shows a sharp dip in the number of trips taken by Canadians both by air and the land route. As per data from Statistics Canada, the country's national statistical agency, Canadians returned from 13% fewer trips by air to the US in February than they did a year ago. Not just that, land border crossings too fell, with the same outlet reporting that return trips from the US undertaken by Canadians in February dropped 23% from a year earlier. What explains this? You see, as for the Wall Street Journal, more than Trump's tariff threats, his annexation plans have caused a great deal of anxiety among the Canadians, who are now increasingly unwilling to take trips across the border. Reports of prolonged detentions for tourists and green card holders have further discouraged them to holiday in the US. Just after Trump announced new tariffs soon after he took office, then Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, encouraged Canadians to change their vacation plans to focus on exploring sites within the country and perhaps not travel to the US. And it seems to have worked wonders for domestic tourism. But this could be bad news for the US economy. As per the US Travel Association Trade Group, Canadians made 20.2 million visits to the US in 2024. And experts warn that a 10% drop could lead to $2 billion in lost revenue and more than 14,000 jobs lost. That's huge, and the impact is already being felt. Cities and small towns near the US-Canada border. And what does the Trump administration have to say about this? Well, it remained firm on the US president's conviction of turning Canada into the 51st American state, with the White House spokesperson Anna Kelly saying in an email that once Canadians become Americans, their international travel worries would be resolved once and for all. The Trump impact, by the way. that has not just affected the travel aspect of Canadians, but also their daily lifestyles. More and more Canadians are opting for homegrown options for groceries and other essentials. In short, they're going local, with more and more consumers embracing a Buy Canadian movement. Now, is this shift to going local for always, or will proposed tariffs in other sectors bring about a change in how Canadians think and act? The coming days will reveal. Benjamin Netanyahu wants me dead. That's the shocking allegation made by Israel's top domestic intelligence agency chief, Ronen Bar. Yes, you heard that right. Let me repeat that. The head of Israel's spy agency, Shin Bet, has accused the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu of trying to imprison, or, in his words, even execute him. According to reports in Israeli media, Bar told Israeli ministers, and I'm quoting him here, "Yesterday you accused me of treason. Today you're threatening to send me to jail. Tomorrow you will execute me." But why is Bar saying this against the Israeli Prime Minister? Well, there's history to this. Bar on multiple occasions has said that Netanyahu is trying to remove him as the head of Shin Bet. And just 2 weeks ago, Netanyahu made these allegations public. Take a listen.
Citizens of Israel, we are in the midst of a war for our very existence, a war on 7 fronts. At all times, but especially in an existential war like this, the Prime Minister must have full confidence in the head of the Shin Bet Domestic Security Service. But unfortunately, the reality is the opposite. I do not have such trust. I have an ongoing lack of trust in the head of the Shin Bet Security Service, a distrust that has only grown over time.
Netanyahu further accused the Shin Bet of attempting to topple his government. And his decision to sack Bar, in Netanyahu's words, was in order to prevent a civil war from breaking out and to ensure that Israel remains a democratic state. But Netanyahu was unable to proceed any further. That's because Israel's Supreme Court quickly intervened and put a temporary freeze on Netanyahu's decision to sack Bar. And it was not only the country's top court that took up this matter. Thousands of Israelis across the country condemned Netanyahu's decision and launched widespread demonstrations. On your screens right now are visuals from Tel Aviv from just 3 days ago. Thousands of Israelis congregated together to demonstrate against Netanyahu for attempting to dismiss Bar, accusing him of removing people who opposed his rule and holding his government accountable. Now, the Shin Bet and Netanyahu have been at odds ever since the October 7th Hamas attack, with Netanyahu blaming the Shin Bet for failing to prevent the incident from happening. On the contrary, the Shin Bet's report found Netanyahu's policies on Gaza, such as allowing the supply of major funds to Hamas, including some directly, as one of the major factors leading to the attacks on Israel. However, Netanyahu has rejected all these findings. Furthermore, the Shin Bet is also investigating Netanyahu and other members of his office for allegedly taking money from the Qatari government. What for? For favorable interest for the Gulf state. It's important to note here that Netanyahu is currently under trial for fraud and bribery, among other such charges, for attempting to garner positive coverage of himself from Israeli media. According to reports, Netanyahu is aiming to replace Bar with a person who will drop all the investigations against him and his government. And a final call on whether Bar's dismissal is illegal will be taken by Israel's Supreme Court next month. Well, whatever the outcome may be, Bar's allegation of Netanyahu wanting him dead have only made this clash between Bibi and Bar increasingly bitter. Our next story is about the Ukraine war. Just minutes ago, the White House released a statement on the talks between American and Ukrainian delegations in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which has been happening for the past few days. It says that the US and Ukraine have agreed to ensure safe navigation, eliminate the use of force, and prevent the use of commercial vessels for military purposes in the Black Sea. It says that Kiev and Washington have agreed to develop measures for implementing a ban on strikes against energy facilities in Russia and Ukraine. And most importantly, the statement says that the US and Ukraine will continue working towards a durable and lasting peace and welcome third countries to support the implementation of maritime and energy agreements. Well, this statement by the White House, this is the outcome from talks between US and Ukraine separately. US and Russian officials also met in Riyadh. Earlier, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Black Sea shipping was discussed with American counterparts and that Russia will be willing to strike a deal, but only if the US orders Ukraine to respect it. The American and Russian officials reportedly met for 12 hours on Monday. A statement from that meeting is expected soon, but as far as battleground is concerned, despite the ongoing talks to end the war, Ukraine and Russia are still exchanging fire on the ground. Overnight, Ukraine reported that Russia launched 139 drones and 1 ballistic missile. According to Ukraine's statement this morning, they shot down 78 drones launched by Russia. Another 34 were reportedly decoys that did not carry explosives and caused no damage. Meanwhile, in Kursk, Ukraine claims that an airstrike killed up to 30 Russian soldiers at a military site. Remember, Ukraine had launched an incursion into the Kursk region last August. But we've been telling you on the show here how in recent weeks its forces have begun withdrawing under pressure from Russia. Both Russia and the US say that many Ukrainian troops were trapped in the Kursk region. But Ukraine denies all of this. Now, across the border, Russia reportedly carried out drone strikes in several parts of Ukraine overnight. The Kiev region was targeted early in the day, and firefighters worked to extinguish a fire at a warehouse. No casualties were reported. And in the eastern regions of Kharkiv and Sumy, Russian strikes destroyed several buildings and vehicles. Ukraine's military reported that Russia conducted 76 aviation strikes and used 794 drones against Ukrainian targets. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, the Kremlin accused the Ukrainian military of targeting Russian journalists in Moscow-controlled eastern Ukraine, resulting in a fatal strike. On Monday, a Ukrainian artillery strike reportedly killed 6 people, including the 2 journalists and their driver in Luhansk region of eastern Ukraine, which is controlled by Russia and where Ukraine launched an attack. Maria Zakharova, who is the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, described it as a targeted attack on a civilian vehicle carrying journalists, expressing condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. Meanwhile, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov accused Ukraine of targeting the journalists as well. Take a listen.
The fire was targeted. They were deliberately targeted to kill them. The Kyiv regime continues its atrocities against journalists and people who do not have weapons in their hands. This is the nature of the Kyiv regime, and this is yet another justification of our special military operation.
Now, here's why these attacks matter. You see, these attacks coincide with negotiations in Saudi Arabia between Russia and American officials. And that's regarding a possible ceasefire in the war. And we just told you about the statement that came out after the meeting between Ukraine and the US officials. Now, all this has been challenging as both Kiev and Moscow sides continue to attack each other with drones and missiles. According to news agency AP, a major sticking point is that what target would be off limits to strike. While the White House said energy and infrastructure would be covered, the Kremlin has said that the deal referred more narrowly to energy infrastructure. Zelensky has emphasized the need to protect infrastructure like railways and ports. On Monday, talks in Riyadh aimed to address differences between Ukraine and Russia, including a potential pause in Black Sea attacks, which has happened from the Ukraine side. And meanwhile, on Tuesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow supports renewing the Black Sea initiative to ensure safe grain exports through the strategic waterway. But Lavrov warned that it must come with clear guarantees that Russia believes the US should demand from Ukraine. Ultimately, the talks in Riyadh lasted nearly 12 hours. While one part of the details have surfaced a short while back, we're still awaiting details from the Russia-US meet. And speaking of Ukraine, here's what else Ukraine is at risk of becoming. The longer it takes for a ceasefire to be established, Ukraine may transform into an arms paradise. Yes, you heard that right. A new report by the Times UK reveals how Ukraine is undergoing a firearms revolution. The country, which imports more weapons than any other nation and is facing one of the deadliest wars in Europe since World War II, is reportedly at a risk of becoming a weapons paradise. Surveys cited by the Times UK have shown that a majority of the Ukrainian population favors allowing civilians to own guns. Take a look at this graphics, these numbers on your screens. As you can see, in 2022, that's when the war broke out, over 62% of Ukrainians said yes to carrying firearms for personal protection, whereas 19% said no to carrying arms and around 18% said yes for special needs. But that's not all. In the years and months that followed, there's also been an increase in the number of Ukrainians armed with weapons. Whereas in 2011, less than 4% of Ukrainians carried a knife or a gun with them, the stats show that the number increased. In 2019, less than 6% carried personal arms. But in 2023, that's when Ukraine was at a war, more than 16% of Ukrainians carried arms on them. And when asked why, most Ukrainians cited by the report say that their perceptions changed after seeing Russian tanks rolling in their cities. They especially cited what happened to unarmed civilians in Bucha and Irpin. Remember, in the early days of the war, Russia was accused of committing the most terrible war crimes in Bucha, a town northwest of Kiev. The city saw fierce fighting after it was occupied by the Russian army on the third day of the war. Reports say that civilians were targeted and pictures of dead bodies piled on the street. It had invited global outcry. Fast forward to today. According to those interviewed by the Times UK, for Ukrainians, Bucha is a reminder of what happens to unarmed civilians caught in the crossfire. And so for them, the main priority is protection of their own. And it's not without reason. The country is at a war. For 3 years, they have faced relentless assaults from the Russians, a military superpower that has unleashed waves of missiles, drones and bombs on Ukraine, resulting in civilian casualties. Even though, before the war started in 2022, most Ukrainians did not want firearm controls to be liberalized, and that sentiment has reversed now. Right now, Ukraine is the sole country in Europe where firearm regulations are not governed by law. Instead, a decree from the Ministry of Internal Affairs from 1998 oversees all matters related to firearms. Now, what this means is that the whole situation in Ukraine is pretty much complicated. In Kiev, there are many gun shops that reportedly sell a variety of weapons, including powerful sniper rifles and shotguns at low prices. To buy a gun, Ukrainians need to reportedly go through a procedure that just takes about 30 days, about a month, which includes checks and a fee of $1,200. They can own shotguns and rifles, but Ukrainians are not allowed to have handguns unless they receive one for service to the state. Now, critics say that this system is open to misuse in the future. You see, since the war started in 2022, the situation has changed dramatically. Even Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has encouraged citizens to arm themselves for defense, leading many to receive firearms from the government itself. And since then, a large number of weapons have entered the country, including those left behind by the Russian soldiers. Of course, experts are concerned that without a government program to buy back unregistered guns, post-war Ukraine could see more violence, with disputes being settled with firearms instead of peaceful means. Just to be clear, no one knows exactly how many weapons are in private hands, but estimates say that it could range from 1 to 5 million. It begs this very question: is Ukraine an arms paradise in the making? Well, China has accused the US of interfering in Venezuela's internal affairs. And this accusation by China comes after US President Donald Trump announced 25% tariffs on imports from countries that buy oil and gas from Venezuela. The tariffs, he said, could come into effect as soon as on April 2nd. Well, China is the largest importer of Venezuelan oil, while other buyers of the Venezuelan crude oil includes India, Spain and the US itself. In a press conference, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun called on the US to stop interfering in Venezuela's internal affairs. Also, he urged the US to abolish what it called the illegal unilateral sanctions imposed on Venezuela. The South American country has been under US sanctions for years, including a new round in January. Announcing the tariffs on Monday, Trump on social media platform Truth Social accused Venezuela of being very hostile to the US, of purposefully sending undercover tens of thousands of high-level and other criminals to the US. That's what Trump has accused Venezuela for. Meanwhile, the Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, hit back at Trump's announcement and said they can sanction and impose tariffs on whoever they want. What they will not be able to sanction is the love and patriotism of the Venezuelan people.
Las sanciones de ayer las derrotamos.
Yesterday's sanctions, we defeated them, and those to come, we will also defeat them with work, inventive creation, love and patriotism. They can sanction and impose tariffs on whoever they want. What they will not be able to sanction is the love and patriotism of the Venezuelan people.
According to Trump's order, the 25% tariff would expire a year after a country has last imported Venezuelan oil. The tariffs are likely to hit countries like India and China, which import oil from the South American country. In December 2023 and January 2024, India was the top buyer of Venezuelan crude oil at 254,000 barrels per day. India's oil import was nearly half of Venezuela's total oil export in January. Similarly, apart from India, China imported 500,000 barrels of oil per day from Venezuela in February. All right, now the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia, it's in its fourth year, but it is now having a profound impact on the morale of soldiers in neighboring countries. In Czech Republic, there has been a major increase in the number of soldiers leaving the military. According to reports, the number of dismissals has increased by 40% since the beginning of the war. Czech Defense Minister Jana Černochová attributes this trend to the public climate fueled by threats of mobilization and deployment to Ukraine. She said that many soldiers who joined the army during peaceful times are now using these threats as an excuse to leave the Czech army. The Czech Republic abolished mandatory military service in 2004 and has since maintained a professional army. However, the latest data shows that 1,370 servicemen left the army in 2024 compared to 1,200 in 2023 and 1,300 in 2022. And this represents a major increase from the pre-Russia-Ukraine era when the annual number of soldiers quitting the army was between 800 to 1,000. Chernokova's recent statements shed light on the motivations behind the rising number of departures from the Czech military. Her off-the-record discussions with military personnel provided insights into the challenges faced by the Czech Defense Ministry in perhaps maintaining the military strength and capabilities. The situation also highlights the broader impact of the Russia-Ukraine war on European militaries and, like I mentioned, the morale of the soldiers. Like Czech Republic in maintaining morale and retention among their troops, there are also other countries who are going through a similar turmoil. On recent visit to Ukraine, Czech President Petr Pavel signaled that his country is ready to join a potential foreign troop deployment in the event that Kiev and Moscow agree on a truce.
There was a meeting of chiefs of defense in London, whose primary purpose was to talk about modalities of potential military presence in Ukraine. And Czech Republic is ready to be part of that negotiation. And if there is finally a decision to create such a force, I truly believe the Czech Republic would be part of it.
The United States is facing a severe egg shortage driven by the worst bird flu outbreak in history. Since early 2022, the virus has wiped out nearly 170 million chickens, turkeys and other birds, leading to a sharp drop in egg supply. As a result, wholesale egg prices surged 53.6% in February, forcing stores to limit stock and restaurants to raise prices. In response, the Trump administration announced a $1 billion plan to lower egg costs. This includes virus prevention measure, vaccine research and expanding imports from countries like Brazil, Turkey and South Korea. US egg imports from Brazil alone jumped 93% last month compared to 2024, according to the Brazilian Animal Protein Association, that is. Well, beyond imports, the administration is also looking at regulatory changes to allow broiler chicken eggs laid by chickens raised for meat, to be used in foods like cake mixes and salad dressings. Currently, 360 million broiler eggs are discarded annually. As the US scrambles to stabilize egg prices, it has also relaxed import restrictions. In January, the administration approved Brazilian eggs for usage into food goods, a shift from the previous use in pet food. Meanwhile, states like Nevada and Arizona have suspended cage-free eggs laws to address supply shortages. Nevada paused a 2021 law requiring all eggs sold in the state to be cage-free, while Arizona lawmakers are mulling removing a similar rule. These policy shifts mark a departure from past consumer-driven demand for cage-free eggs, as shortages and rising prices reshape priorities in the US.